Holes happen to be one of the most interesting and unique things in the world. Are holes actual entities? Are they genuine things? Are holes something or nothing? I want you to think of actual entities as things like books and computers and phones. What would not be an actual entity in this video would be an immaterial thing like a thought or a dream. When these topics first come up, our initial response is typically to say that they're just nothing. They're not actual entities. Let's go over some fun experiments and see if what you initially think of holes, which might be that they're nothing, is reflective of reality. Let's look at some actual holed objects to get an idea of where the issues lie. So here's a donut. Donuts have holes. I can point to this hole. I can talk about the hole. I can measure it. I can count it. I can move it. So what makes you think that this hole is nothing? Now I want you to think of this piece of donut. The things I can do to this actual entity are almost identical to what I can do to this empty hole. I can measure this. It has a location. I can move it. I can change its shape and manipulate it. It has a size and it has a location and it has all these very interesting properties about it that we can also apply to holes. We can fix holes. We can fill them. Are we destroying a nothing? Are we measuring a nothing? Does this nothing have a location in the donut? So how do we treat things that are nothing like they're something? What happens if I cover half of the hole? Can holes have parts? Can a nothing have parts? Would you now call this half of a hole? And this would be the whole hole? So how can a nothing have a half or have a whole? Here's another interesting thing to think about. Here we have a straw. This straw has an entrance and an exit. It's perforated. And the inside is tunnel-like. Do we have one hole or two holes? Now I want you to think of a cave. A cave is just what we'll call a hole in a mountain. Let's say we enter the cave and there's another kind of cavity or hole, a depression inside the cave. Does that mean a hole can have a hole? How can nothing have more nothing? If someone presented you with Swiss cheese and asked you how many holes were in it, you would be able to count them. And you could say something like, there's 3 holes, or there's 5 holes, or there's 10 holes. If holes don't exist, then how can there be 3 nothings or 5 nothings? How did we count the stuff that isn't even made of stuff? So if someone asked you where you would place our topic of holes on this spectrum of material and immaterial entities, where would you place holes? If you think that holes are just nothing, they're a lack of matter, then you would probably have to put them on the immaterial side of the spectrum. But it's not very intuitive to think of holes in the same way we think of dreams and thoughts and beliefs, moral values and numbers, because These kinds of things are truly immaterial. They're in our mind, they're private. But wholes are something that we intuitively see. So it's almost as if it's closer to material entities, because just like books and mugs and cats, we can see them and point to them and measure them and say where they're located, and they can technically move, right? But that also seems wrong, because what we're talking about here is a nothing. So how do you put nothing in a spectrum of materials? But also, how do you put nothing on the side of immaterial things? Because these things we can't see and interact with in the ways that we can interact with material objects and wholes. If someone were to ask me where I would place wholes on the spectrum, I wouldn't exactly put it in the middle. I would put it probably right here. And I would also probably add in a similar concept like shadows. Because think about it. The way we talk about shadows is also as if they're real objects and they exist. And we can see shadows and we can see wholes, but we can't really see dreams and thoughts and moral values and other abstract material entities. So wholes and shadows are not exactly material, but they're not exactly immaterial. Because if they're just nothing, then how are we talking about it? How do you intuitively know what this video is about? It's almost as if we can't split up reality neatly into actual things and not quite things. If wholes are just nothing, then why does it feel so wrong to say they're immaterial and they don't exist? But it also feels wrong to talk about them like we would talk about books, like they're material things, because they're nothing. What we can say definitively about wholes is that they are parasitic in nature. Wholes cannot exist without a material host. Any whole you find is going to be surrounded in some way to an actual material entity. So maybe the lining of the whole is the whole. We end up with a whole nother set of issues if we try to define wholes by their lining. You would then need to be able to somehow calculate how much of a lining is the whole. Is it one molecule? Is it two molecules? If we say that, then we're back to square one, where we're referring to wholes as actual things, as actual entities. So even technically speaking, black holes are not actual holes because there's no host surrounding them. It's just a way of speaking. If a hole is a thing, then if we fill it, we're destroying it. If we dig a hole, we just created it. How do you create or destroy or fix a nothing? Let's say someone asked you, are holes more similar to dreams or to cakes? What would you say? If we have a donut hole here that we can see and interact and point to, then it would seem more similar to something like a cake, a coffee mug, a tin. Because when we get in the topic of dreams, moral values, thoughts, and beliefs, we can't point to those and measure those and discuss those in the way we can discuss this donut hole. So I would say that wholes are more similar to cakes and other paradigm objects than they are to immaterial things. And that's where things get weird, because you have to remember that we're talking about nothing. So how is it that this nothing is more similar to a material object than an immaterial object? I'm curious to know what your thoughts on wholes are. Are they actual things, or are they nothing? How is it that we can talk about nothing as if it's something? And bonus question is, would you categorize shadows in a similar way? Because shadows are also things that we talk about and refer to, but aren't really there. Or are they? If you want to look at this from a more strictly mathematical perspective, you can look up the topology of math and wholes, which is also bizarre in and of itself, because in topology, they would actually say that this donut is equivalent to a coffee mug.